The ocean does not forgive. It does not warn. It does not explain. It simply acts. And on a quiet Tuesday morning, as the first pale light of dawn broke over the shores of North Carolina, a small group of early joggers stopped dead in their tracks. Their phones came out. Their voices dropped to whispers. Some of them took a step back, instinctively, almost involuntarily, as if some ancient part of their brain was firing a warning they couldn't consciously understand. Because lying on the sand in front of them, motionless, enormous, terrifying even in stillness, was something that had no business being there. A great white shark, not a small one, not a juvenile, a fully grown apex predator, over 17 feet long, weighing somewhere close to 2,000 pounds, beached on the shore like a broken warship run aground. The dorsal fin, the broad, powerful tail, the rows of serrated teeth just barely visible as the jaw hung open. The glassy dark eye, enormous, expressionless, and somehow still watching, even in that state. One of the joggers later told reporters, "I knew what it was immediately, and I knew I should have felt safe. It wasn't in the water, but I wasn't. I wasn't safe at all. It felt like the ocean itself was sending a message." And maybe it was, because the real question, the one that would haunt marine biologists, oceanographers, and researchers for weeks to come, wasn't just about this single animal. It was about what this event represented, what it meant, what it was warning us about. A great white shark, the most perfectly engineered predator on the planet, does not wash ashore by accident. Something happened. Something went wrong. And today, we are going to find out exactly what that something might have been. Stay with us, because this story goes far deeper than you think. Far deeper than the shallow water where she was found, and far darker than anything you might expect from a simple wildlife incident. This is the story of a giant that fell, and what her fall might mean for all of us. Drop a comment right now. What's your first instinct? Why do you think a great white shark ended up on the beach? Let's see who gets closest to the truth. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover the ocean's deepest secrets, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Before we can begin to understand what happened on that beach, before we can even begin to ask the right questions, we need to talk about what a great white shark actually is. Not what Hollywood told you. Not what Jaws burned into a generation of moviegoers. Not the mindless killing machine of popular mythology. The real animal, the actual creature. Because the truth is far more extraordinary and far more unsettling than fiction ever managed to be. Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark, a species that has existed in some form for over 16 million years. Let that number sink in for a moment. 16 million years. To put it in perspective, our own genus, Homo, is barely 3 million years old. The great white was already ancient before the first humans ever looked up at the stars. In 16 million years of evolution, nature had one goal: make this animal perfect. And by almost every biological measure, it succeeded. An adult great white can reach lengths of up to 20 feet, roughly the size of a large pickup truck. Weight? Anywhere from 1,500 to over 5,000 pounds, the largest recorded specimens. The jaw generates a bite force estimated between 4,000 and 18,000 newtons, among the most powerful of any living animal. The teeth, triangular, serrated, replaceable, can number over 300 at any given time, arranged in multiple rows, replacing themselves throughout the shark's lifetime like a biological conveyor belt of destruction. But raw power is only part of the story. The great white is, above all else, a sensory miracle. Its lateral line, a system of fluid-filled canals running along its body, allows it to detect vibrations in the water at distances of up to 820 feet. Its ampullae of Lorenzini, tiny electroreceptors clustered around the snout, can sense the bioelectric fields generated by the muscle contractions of nearby animals. In practical terms, a great white can detect a beating heart from meters away through solid sand in complete darkness. Its sense of smell is the stuff of legend, capable of detecting a single drop of blood diluted in 25 gallons of water. capable of tracking a scent trail across miles of open ocean with terrifying precision. It can see in near total darkness. It can regulate its own body temperature, unusual for a fish, allowing it to be active and alert in waters that would leave other species sluggish and slow. It can burst to speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour in a short sprint, and it can dive to depths of nearly 4,000 feet. It is not just a predator, it is an ecological cornerstone. In every ocean system where great whites exist, they are the regulators, the organisms that keep population balances in check, that prevent any one species from overwhelming an ecosystem. Remove the great white, and the entire food web begins to unravel. This is why what happened on that beach was so alarming to anyone who truly understood what they were looking at. Because an animal this powerful, this perfectly built, this magnificently adapted for survival across 16 million years of changing seas, does not end up stranded on a beach without a reason. Here's something to think about. Did you know great whites can detect your heartbeat from meters away? Comment below, does that make you more afraid of the ocean or more fascinated by it? New here? Subscribe now. We go deep on ocean science and wildlife mysteries that most channels won't touch. Now let's talk about what actually happened, the specific details, the timeline. Because the details matter enormously when you're trying to reconstruct why an animal of this size ended up where it did. It was approximately 6:40 in the morning when the first call came in to the local wildlife authority. A woman walking her dog reported a very large fish on the beach near Cape Hatteras. The dispatcher, experienced, professional, later admitted that even she hesitated for a moment when the caller described the size. "At first, I thought it was an exaggeration," she said. "People see a big fish and say it's enormous." But she kept saying, "No, you don't understand. This thing is the size of a car." And something in her voice told me she wasn't exaggerating. First responders arrived on scene at 6:58 a.m. What they found stopped them cold. The shark was positioned at the high tide line, which immediately told marine biologists something important. She had come in with the tide. She hadn't simply swum too close to shore and gotten confused by shallow water. She had been carried in by the movement of the water itself, suggesting she had been either already incapacitated or critically weakened before she reached the beach. Her length was later measured at approximately 17.4 feet. A mature female, females grow larger than males in this species. Her girth was massive. Her overall physical condition, upon initial inspection, appeared surprisingly intact. No obvious catastrophic external injuries. No missing fins, no massive wounds visible to the naked eye. She was alive when she was found. Barely, but alive. Responders could see the gills moving, slowly, laboriously. The tail made weak, intermittent movements in the sand, as if some deep biological drive was still trying to propel her back toward the ocean she had come from. But she couldn't move. She was too large, too heavy, too far from the water. A great white shark cannot survive long out of water. They are obligate ram ventilators, meaning they must keep moving forward to force water through their gills and extract oxygen. On land, that system fails completely. The weight of their own body, unsupported by water, crushes their internal organs. They suffocate and collapse simultaneously. The scene that unfolded over the next several hours was both heartbreaking and scientifically critical. Marine biologists arrived, blood samples were taken, tissue biopsies were conducted. The shark's measurements were recorded in exhaustive detail. Acoustic tags were checked. And here something remarkable emerged. She had a tag. This animal had been tagged by researchers from the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy roughly 3 years earlier, approximately 600 miles up the coast. She had a name in the research database, a history, years of tracked movement data, migration routes, feeding zones, seasonal patterns. In the research community, she was known. And the data from her tag told a story that raised far more questions than it answered. In the 6 weeks before her stranding, her movement patterns had changed dramatically. The deep-water hunting routes she had followed consistently for 3 years had been abandoned. She had moved increasingly shallow. Her speed had dropped. Her dive depth had decreased. And in the final 72 hours before she appeared on the beach, her tag had gone silent entirely. a possible sign that she had stopped moving in a meaningful way. Something had been wrong with her for weeks, and nobody had known. This detail about the tag changes everything. She had been acting strangely for 6 weeks before this happened. What do you think started it? Drop your theory below. Subscribe if you're finding this as fascinating as we do. There's so much more to come, and the next section is where things get really disturbing. Wipeout. That's the word that dominated every conversation among researchers in the days following the stranding. Not how. How is relatively straightforward once you understand shark physiology and tidal mechanics. The how can be reconstructed from physical evidence and data. But why? Why does one of the ocean's most capable predators, an animal that has navigated the world's oceans for 16 million years, end up helpless on a beach? Why does an animal that can detect changes in electromagnetic fields, that can sense pressure waves from hundreds of feet away, that has a navigational system so precise it can return to the same feeding ground year after year across thousands of miles of open ocean, why does that animal lose its way? It's a question that sounds almost philosophical, and in some ways it is, because the answer, or rather the multiple possible answers, each carry implications that extend far beyond a single animal on a single beach. Dr. Sarah Colsingsworth, a marine biologist who was part of the response team, put it this way in an interview 3 days after the stranding. When a top predator fails, it means something in the system has failed. Great whites don't just give up. They don't get tired of swimming. They don't accidentally take a wrong turn. When we see an event like this, we need to be asking not just what happened to the animal, but what happened to the environment the animal lives in, because those are never separate questions. And that framing, the idea that this isn't just an animal story, but an ecosystem story, is what makes this event so significant. Because in the past decade, the number of large marine mammal and shark strandings along the Atlantic coast has increased by nearly 40%. 40%, that is not a statistical blip. That is a trend, and trends in science demand explanation. So let's look at the leading theories. Let's examine each one carefully, not sensationally, not with speculation, but with the actual evidence that researchers have gathered, the data they have analyzed, and the conclusions they have tentatively begun to draw. Because each theory, in its own way, is more alarming than the last. And together they paint a picture of an ocean under pressure, a vast, ancient, self-regulating system that may finally be showing the strain of a century of human activity in ways we are only beginning to understand. Are you ready? Let's go deeper. Before we get into the theories, which do you suspect most? Disease, climate, human interference? Vote in the comments. We'll reveal which theory has the most scientific support at the end. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. You will not want to miss the next section. It's the one that has researchers genuinely alarmed. Theory 1, disease and biological weakness. The first thing researchers look for in any stranding event is internal pathology. And in the case of our shark, what the post-mortem examination revealed was sobering. Parasitic load. The liver, normally a clean, well-defined organ, showed signs of significant inflammatory response consistent with long-term parasitic infection. The species of parasite identified, Crassicauda, is a nematode worm known to infest large marine mammals and, in severe cases, large sharks. These organisms embed themselves in muscle tissue and organ walls, causing progressive damage over months and years. A mild infestation causes discomfort. A severe one causes organ failure. In her case, the level of infestation was moderate to severe, enough to weaken her, enough to compromise her immune system, enough to impair her ability to hunt efficiently, which in turn would have depleted her fat reserves, further weakening her, creating a downward spiral that, once begun, becomes almost impossible to arrest. But here's the key question: why now? Why this level of infestation in an adult animal that had apparently been healthy for years? Parasitic loads in wild animals tend to increase when immune systems are compromised, and immune systems tend to be compromised by stress. Chronic stress, the kind of low-level, persistent biological stress that comes from navigating an increasingly challenging environment. An environment with less food, with more noise, with shifting chemical balances, with temperatures that no longer match the patterns this animal's nervous system evolved to interpret. Which brings us to the second theory. Theory 2, ocean temperature shift. This is the theory that gets the most attention in the scientific literature, and for good reason. The North Atlantic has warmed measurably over the past 2 decades. The data is not in dispute. Average sea surface temperatures along the eastern seaboard have risen by approximately 1.2 degrees Celsius since the year 2000. That sounds small. It is not small. Ocean temperature is everything for a large marine predator. It determines where prey species congregate. It determines current patterns and therefore navigation. It affects oxygen saturation in the water. And for a species like the great white, which, while warm-blooded relative to most fish, still relies on specific thermal gradients to locate prey and regulate its own physiology, a shift of even 1 degree can fundamentally alter behavior. The prey, primarily seals and large fish, follow the temperature bands they evolved for. When those bands shift, the prey moves, and the predator must follow, or starve. That pursuit can take a great white into unfamiliar territories, into shallow coastal waters where temperature gradients are unstable, into areas closer to shore than their navigational instincts were ever calibrated for. There is strong evidence from her tag data that in the 6 months before her stranding, she had been tracking prey into progressively shallower and more near-shore environments where the risks of stranding, disorientation, and tidal trapping are significantly higher. She wasn't making a mistake. She was following the food. The food had moved, and it had moved because the ocean had changed. Theory 3, disorientation and navigation failure. Great white sharks navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. This is not speculation. It has been documented in controlled studies. They possess magnetite crystals, tiny biological magnets, embedded in tissue near their brains, which allow them to sense magnetic field variations with extraordinary precision. This is how they return to the same feeding grounds year after year across thousands of miles of open ocean. But magnetic navigation can be disrupted significantly. Solar activity, specifically geomagnetic storms, which occur when the sun ejects massive bursts of charged particles that interact with Earth's magnetic field, can temporarily distort or partially erase the magnetic signals that sharks rely on. And in the weeks preceding her stranding, there had been documented geomagnetic activity above baseline levels. Additionally, anthropogenic electromagnetic interference, submarine cables, offshore wind farm installations, marine radar systems, active sonar used by naval vessels. All of these generate electromagnetic fields that overlap with the frequency range the shark's magnetoreceptive system operates in. The coastal waters of North Carolina are among the most electromagnetically cluttered stretches of ocean on the East Coast. Could the combination of a weakened, parasitically stressed animal, navigating in warmer than normal water, through an electromagnetic environment significantly more complex than what her species evolved in, have produced catastrophic navigational failure? Could she simply have become, in the most literal sense, lost? The answer, according to multiple researchers, is very possibly yes. Theory 4, human impact. We need to talk about this one directly because it is the most uncomfortable theory and possibly the most important. The internal examination found something beyond the parasite infestation. Trace amounts of heavy metals, mercury and cadmium at levels above baseline, were detected in liver tissue, not at acutely toxic levels, but chronically elevated, accumulated over years of feeding at the top of a food chain that is itself increasingly contaminated. Microplastic particles were detected in gut content, not in large quantities, but present. There was evidence of blunt force trauma to the lower jaw, consistent with, though not definitively caused by, collision with a vessel. The bruising pattern was old, suggesting the injury had occurred weeks or months prior. And the noise. We almost never talk about ocean noise as a direct hazard, but it is. Naval sonar, commercial shipping traffic, seismic surveys for oil and gas exploration. The North Atlantic is acoustically one of the noisiest ocean environments on the planet. For animals that depend on acoustic and electromagnetic senses as finely calibrated as the great whites, that noise is not just an inconvenience. It is a form of neurological pollution. It interferes with the very sensory systems the animal depends on to navigate, hunt, and survive. The conclusion that emerges from combining all four theories is not that any single cause drove this animal to shore. It is that a cascade of compounding factors, disease, temperature, disorientation, and chronic human-generated stress, overwhelmed an animal that, under normal circumstances, would have been perfectly capable of surviving all of them individually. She was not beaten by one thing. She was worn down by everything, all at once. Four theories, and honestly, the last one is the most disturbing. Which do you think contributed most? And do you think humans are responsible? Be honest in the comments. We read every single one. Subscribe and ring the bell. The next two sections connect this event to something much bigger, and you'll want to be here for it. This is where we need to zoom out. Because as extraordinary as this single event is, as compelling as the story of this one animal is, it becomes truly alarming only when you place it in context. The year 2023 saw 1,833 reported marine animal stranding events along the Atlantic coast of the United States. That number was up 38% from a decade earlier. It included dolphins, whales, sea turtles, and sharks. It included apex predators. It included species that have no biological reason to find themselves in trouble, in waters they have navigated successfully for millions of years. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, lists the great white shark as vulnerable on its red list of threatened species. The global population is estimated at fewer than 3,500 individuals. Let that number settle in your mind. There are fewer great white sharks alive on Earth today than there are people in a medium-sized shopping mall. Fewer than 3,500 individuals for an entire species that spans every major ocean on the planet. And the pressures on that population are not decreasing. They are increasing. Climate change is restructuring the thermal geography of every ocean on Earth. The prey species that support apex predators like the great white are shifting their ranges, their population densities, their seasonal patterns. The ocean that this animal's nervous system evolved to navigate over millions of years is becoming, decade by decade, an increasingly foreign environment. At the same time, human presence in the ocean is expanding. Offshore wind energy development, important and necessary as it is for reducing carbon emissions, introduces new electromagnetic interference into coastal marine environments. Shipping traffic continues to increase. Deep-sea mining operations are beginning to open up in previously undisturbed habitats. Recreational and commercial fishing pressure on prey species like tuna, seals, and large pelagic fish continues to remove the food base that supports the entire upper trophic chain. There is also the issue of what scientists call ecosystem unraveling, the process by which the loss or impairment of a keystone species triggers cascading effects through an entire food web. Great whites regulate seal and sea lion populations. Without that regulation, those populations can explode, consuming fish at rates that collapse fish stocks, affecting every species that depends on those fish, including commercially important species that human economies depend on. The beaching of a single great white shark is not, in isolation, an ecological catastrophe, but it is a data point, and data points accumulate into patterns. And patterns, in ecology, are the language in which the natural world communicates its condition to us, if we choose to listen. Dr. Michael Hennessy of the Ocean Research Institute put it starkly at a conference just weeks after the stranding. Every stranding event is a signal, not background noise, a signal. And the volume on that signal has been increasing for 20 years. At some point, we have to stop treating these events as isolated tragedies and start treating them as what they actually are, a coherent, consistent message from an ecosystem under systemic stress. The ocean is trying to tell us something. The question is whether we are listening, and more importantly, whether we are willing to hear the answer. 3,500 great white sharks left on Earth. Does that number surprise you? Be honest, did you know the population was that low? Comment below. This statistic deserves more attention than it gets. If this video is making you see the ocean differently, subscribe. Because everything we cover here is built on real science, real data, and a real commitment to understanding what's happening beneath the surface. She didn't survive. We should say that clearly. After hours on the beach, despite the efforts of the response team, who did attempt to keep her gills wet, who monitored her vital signs, who worked with genuine dedication and urgency, she did not survive. Her heart stopped at approximately 2:14 p.m., roughly 7.5 hours after she was first discovered. Her body was transported to a marine research facility where a full necropsy took 3 days to complete. Every organ was cataloged. Every tissue sample was preserved. The data from her acoustic tag was downloaded and analyzed. And the picture that emerged from all of that analysis was precisely the picture that the best and most experienced researchers had expected, but had hoped not to find. A body under the chronic systemic stress, an immune system fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously, organs showing the accumulative fingerprints of environmental contamination, navigation systems disrupted by a combination of biological impairment and external electromagnetic interference. An animal that had been struggling, quietly and invisibly, for months, and that had finally reached the limit of what even 16 million years of evolutionary perfection could sustain against a rapidly changing world. What do we do with this story? That's not a rhetorical question. It is the most important practical question this event raises. Because the temptation, understandable, human, completely natural, is to treat this as a tragedy, shake our heads, feel sorrow, appreciate the beauty of the animal, and move on with our day. The news cycle moves fast. There will be another story tomorrow. But here is what the science is telling us. Events like this one that are not standalone tragedies. They are part of an accelerating pattern. And patterns, unlike single events, require systemic responses, not just sympathy. Reducing carbon emissions is not just a climate issue. It is a marine ecosystem issue. It is a shark issue. It is a seal issue, and a fish issue, and a plankton issue, and ultimately a human issue. Because everything in the ocean is connected to everything else, and everything in the ocean is connected to us. Reducing ocean noise pollution through stricter regulation of sonar use, vessel speed limits in critical habitat areas, more careful siting of offshore infrastructure is not just an animal welfare issue. It is a navigational integrity issue for species that underpin entire ecosystems. Addressing ocean plastic and chemical contamination is not just an aesthetic issue. It is a bioaccumulation issue, one that works its way up the food chain and ends up, as we saw in this animal's tissue samples, in the bodies of the ocean's largest and most ecologically significant predators. And most fundamentally, paying attention is not optional. These events are data. Scientists need funding and institutional support to respond to them properly, to analyze them rigorously, and to communicate what they find to policymakers and the public. That chain, from observation to analysis to action, is the only mechanism we have for actually changing the trajectory we appear to be on. She was a giant, one of the most magnificent animals on this planet. She had been alive for over a decade. She had traveled tens of thousands of miles. She had survived every challenge the ocean had thrown at her, until the ocean itself began to change in ways that outpaced even her extraordinary capacity to adapt. Her name in the research database was Andromeda. She deserves to be more than a trending news story. She deserves to be a turning point. Her name was Andromeda. Does giving her a name change how you feel about this story? Share your reaction in the comments. This is the kind of conversation that actually matters. Subscribe and help us reach more people with stories like this one. Every subscriber makes it possible for us to keep doing this work. You've stayed with us through all of it, through the discovery on the shore, through the biology of one of the most extraordinary animals that has ever lived, through the timeline of a stranding that raised more questions than it answered, through 4 theories: disease, temperature, disorientation, human impact, none of which alone tells the whole story, but all of which together tell a story that is impossible to look away from. You've stayed through the bigger picture, the declining populations, the shifting ecosystems, the ocean in transition, through the final hours of an animal that deserved better, through the question of what we do next. And now we have a question for you. Not a simple one, not a comfortable one. Here it is. Do you believe that what happened to Andromeda is a warning, not a metaphor, not a poetic figure of speech? A literal, biological, data-driven warning from an ecosystem that is under pressure and is communicating that pressure in the only language it has, through the bodies of its largest, most visible inhabitants. Because if the answer is yes, even if the answer is maybe, then the follow-up question is, what are we going to do about it? The ocean covers 71% of this planet's surface. It generates over 50% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. It regulates global temperature. It feeds over 1 billion people. It drives weather patterns. It is not a background feature of Earth. It is Earth in the most fundamental sense. And it is not separate from us. It is not something that exists over there, beyond the shore, beyond our concern or our responsibility. It is the system that makes our existence possible. Great white sharks are part of that system. So are the seals they hunt, the fish the seals eat, the plankton the fish feed on. Every link in that chain is connected to every other link, and connected ultimately to us. Andromeda's story ends on a beach in North Carolina, but it doesn't have to end there for her species, or for the ocean she called home for a decade of migration, hunting, and survival. If we pay attention, if we take the signal seriously, if we decide that a world with great white sharks in it is more important than the convenience of ignoring what is happening to them. The ocean is still out there, still vast, still powerful beyond easy comprehension, still full of wonders that science has barely begun to catalog. But it is also, for the first time in the history of our species, genuinely fragile in ways that our actions are directly shaping. The question isn't whether we can afford to care. The question is whether we can afford not to. Tell us, did this video change how you think about sharks, about the ocean, about our role in all of this? We want to know. Every comment is read. Every perspective matters. Drop it below. And one more thing, what ocean mystery or wildlife stories should we cover next? Tell us in the comments. Your suggestions directly shape what we make. If this video moved you, informed you, or made you think differently about the world, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to see it, and come back, because we are just getting started. The ocean has more stories to tell. We'll be here to tell them.